I need a ruling, Chair, because I'm getting text after text after text in relation to the council being here. Myself, I think it's healthy if you could all attend meetings. So I've got 5 texts from different members asking that. So I need a ruling on it from somebody from Democratic Services. Say it's allowed, then I'm safe. I've just got to be sure I'm safe.
So we are live on YouTube now, Chair.
But we are live.
If in that respect, I'm afraid I probably will go on the side of caution, and I would invite Councillor Smithers to withdraw and observe proceedings on YouTube, please. And I believe Councillor Smithers has withdrawn. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. I think it's something we should look at in the future where we could all do it, but the rules are rules, and thank you for that. So moving on, welcome everybody. Have we got any apologies for absence? I have had Victoria Perry. Anybody else?
No, I'm only aware of Councillor Perry, and Councillor Mercer, as one of the named substitutes, is attending on her behalf.
Thank you very much. Have we got notification of requests to address the meeting?
Yes, Chair. We have requests from 5 members of the public to speak on the climate change item, and 1 member of the public to address the committee on the budget item.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for all those members that have put themselves forward for that. Minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of December 2020. Are they a true record?
Move it, Chairman. Jim Hakewell.
No, Chair, they're not a true record.
They say Adam Henley.
They say I'm missing, and yet on the same page they then highlight the fact that I raised a query. I know I was there because unfortunately I raised quite a few queries during the meeting.
That'll be corrected, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair.
Yeah, sorry, I can't see any hands. Paul will have to help me.
Sorry, councillors, can you raise your blue hand, please, if you wish to address the Chair? Thank you.
Hang on a second. I haven't got a blue hand on my screen, unfortunately. I don't know where it is.
Okay, it's Councillor Brown, Chair.
It is. It's just really, I did email in my apologies for that meeting on the 7th of December to the SMB email that we get, but it doesn't appear to have been recorded in the minutes, Chair. So, and I believe, I'm not sure who was subbing for me actually. Anyway, I did email the minutes in, the apologies in.
I will amend accordingly, Chair.
Thank
I'll
you.
check the emails after the meeting.
Okay. So with them 2 points is...
Chair, sorry, Councillor. I think I'll have to call the names out because the screen's quite crowded. Councillor Harrison wishes to come in.
Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, sorry, that just reminds me that I also emailed my apologies in. It was quite late. It was about 10 minutes before the meeting. So, yeah.
That's correct. I remember, Helen. So, yes, Councillor. Paul, anyone else?
Councillor Hakewell wishes to come in.
Councillor Hakewell?
I'll still move it. Somebody else will move it, don't they?
Right, moved, seconded.
Happy to second.
Yeah, brilliant. So that's gone through. Chair's announcements. Can I thank everybody for all the support they gave me during my COVID experience. Not quite over it yet, so if I have to cough a little bit, apologies. And just moving on, I'd just like to thank all the staff who have been involved in the budget process and everything else. A lot used to doing 2 jobs. I know sometimes you think we as members are probably giving you a bit of a hard time, but we do all realise all the hard work you're doing, and you've got your daytime job to do at your local authorities as well, and how difficult it is for everybody. So well done, and also to elected members, because we're all doing 2 jobs and sometimes 3 jobs as well. And just thanks to all the elected members for all the work they've done in this budget process from all over the authority, from all political divides as well. So well done, everybody. So we're now going on to items.
Chair,
Yeah.
Chair, sorry, I was distracted by a message that came up. Councillor Harrison's reminded us we haven't done declarations of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Any declarations of interest? Mine are that are laid down under my declaration of interest form. Anybody else? No? Okay, moving.
Chair, sorry, Chair, to keep interrupting. Mr. Padwick's drew my attention to the fact that he's requested to speak on the blueprint item as well, which I hadn't been informed of, but I've just been off screen to check, and that is correct. So Mr. Padwick will be speaking on climate change and blueprint.
Yep, okay then. So going on to the item 7, task and finish group updates. The first one is climate change, where we have some speakers, Paul.
Yes, and I'd like to invite Dylan, please, to address the meeting, Chair, on your behalf.
Thank you, Dylan.
Good evening, councillors and officers. I'm here to speak on the Task and Finish Group for Climate Change report. One, I think it's amazing that North Northamptonshire has decided to create a Task and Finish Group.
Dylan, I don't know if you can hear us, but I think you've frozen. I don't think anybody else can hear you.
We've lost Dylan for now, Paul.
Yeah, no, I turned mine off because I thought it was mine, but yeah, he's gone.
Okay, Dylan, if you can hear us, can I suggest you log out and log back in, and we'll take the next speaker while you're doing that. Shall I remove him from the meeting, Ben, for the moment? Right. Okay. Can I, Chair? The next speaker is due to be Desdell, who's with us. Chair.
Yes, Des, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, councillors and officers. Firstly, I want to thank the members of the Climate Change Task and Finish Group for stepping into such an important role in advising the new unitary on the climate emergency. Myself and many of my friends, colleagues and fellow speakers were heartened to hear that so many submissions were sent to the email address climatechange@northnorthants.gov.uk. However, a lot of those submissions are only due to the hard work we put in promoting this across our networks and social media, as there was minimal promotion from Future Northants North. I'm glad the deadline for submissions has been extended, but please can you advise when this has been extended to, and will it be more promoted by your comms? As there is still only one Facebook post about the consultation that says it ends on the 14th of January. I note in the interim report that the task was found greater than anticipated and that subject matter experts were difficult to secure, understandably due to the lockdown and recent flooding. Regarding the flooding, and to tie this into one of the future sessions, specifically on education, I was surprised to see in the local news and the very many social media posts about the floods barely a mention of climate change. Even when back in 2018, when the Environment Agency launched its flood action campaign with the message that, and I quote, climate change means more frequent flooding, and that Sir James Bevan, Chief Executive of the Environment Agency, said climate change is likely to mean more frequent and intense flooding. Floods destroy lives, livelihoods and property. So why is the message that the flooding is caused by the climate emergency not more common knowledge? Regarding the experts that were undoubtedly difficult to secure, are they internal to the council or are they external experts being called? As you'll see from the submissions, you have very many experts within our communities willing to help and support this Task and Finish group. To name check only one, who is here, Alison Holland of Bright Kids Social Enterprise has worked in the active travel sector for 17 years and is employed by many councils across the country for her advice and expertise. Will local experts who are willing to contribute be consulted by this group? It's not necessary to reinvent the wheel here. These conversations have been and are being had and positive actions taken across the whole of the country. And I'll finish with the hope that during the transport and movement session that the subject of improving active travel infrastructure features heavily. As having had a few goes on the trial Voi electric bikes in Kettering, I think they're a wonderful addition to the town and would love to see them across the rest of the north of the county in the future, with appropriate infrastructure of course. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Des.
you. Thank you very much. And the chair of the climate change group will have a chance to speak later, and hopefully that some of the points are addressed. And if they can't be addressed tonight, I know that she will get back to you on the other ones. So who is next, Paul?
Well, Dylan's. I'll remove Des now back to the waiting room. Thank you. Dylan is now back with us. So through you, Chair.
Dylan, over to you. Thank you.
Apologies about that. I'd just like to bring attention to the need to create more walkable and livable towns and villages, and the infrastructure that would need in Northamptonshire. For instance, in my area of Kettering, there's an area that is right for a cut through to the town centre, but it's currently not being used in its fallow grounds because our council or our government has not thought pedestrian first. They've thought car first. And links between towns and villages with active travel infrastructure such as cycle lanes is vitally important. I go to sixth form in Corby. I would love to be able to cycle there, but I'm unable to. And that is the case for so many people, that they would love to use cycling or walking or the Voi electric scooters or bikes that have been recently introduced in Kettering, but do not have the ability to, because we have not supported them with infrastructure. So as the Task and Finish group continues its task of collating this report and the final report, I'd like things like that to be taken into account.
Thank you very much for that, Dylan. Very, very informative. The next speaker, Paul.
Okay. Sorry, I've just. I see. Sorry, apologies, Chair. I see, Alison. You've come back into the main meeting. I need to put Alison back into the waiting room. I don't know how.
Right, Alison.
Sorry, Alison.
So we've got Emily now, have we?
We have indeed.
Yeah. Welcome, Emily. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors, officers. It's I really appreciate your time. I also really appreciate all the hard work that you're putting in behind the scenes and all the additional meetings I know that you've arranged just to discuss the different parts of this climate change plan that you're putting together with the Task and Finish group. I understand that you really want to consider all the different angles, and that consulting with the public takes a lot of time and resource, and how that can slow things down. But ultimately, I really hope that the 100+ emails that you received through have been really useful and insightful and offered a lot of value for the report. This year has been exceptionally hard, and I know that flooding and COVID and other obstacles have not made things easier. But 6 months since councils across this county declared a climate emergency, still the public haven't seen a lot of evidence that the progress has been made. Whilst myself and some of the other speakers in this meeting follow the progress of this Task and Finish group more closely and understand that some really good discussions are being had behind the scenes, I'd like to encourage the group to secure some easier, more visual wins for the town along the way. My request would be that every smaller meeting discussing each aspect, that just one action is taken from each meeting, something that can be done on that topic now. It might be small, it might be part of a bigger picture that the Unitary Council can then continue, but for every topic, there is absolutely one small and visual thing that you can do to help show the public that progress is being made. It'll also mean that progress is actually made and that each action sort of paves the way for the rest of the plan. For instance, when you discuss transport, think about resurfacing cycle lanes that need it, filling in a couple of potholes on key cycle paths, or offer subsidised travel on buses for the month when lockdown subsides. For building and development, Dylan's mentioned some things as well, but ensuring that current applications have grey water systems installed and increasing the percentage of on-site renewable energy from 10% to 15%. For natural environment, the tree coverage in our county is half of what it should be compared to others across the UK. We have volunteers in the community right now ready to plant trees. If you allocate space now, they can put in the application to plant hundreds of trees for free. There are many grants available for free trees and people will plant them voluntarily, so this is an easy win for the council. But the grants can only be accessed after the space where the trees will be planted has been confirmed. So that gives you a bit of an idea of the problems that we come across. So yeah, but these are just some of the examples of a few of the sorts of engaging and visual actions you can take now. And you don't have to be alone when you do it. We're here, like we say, there's lots of people in the community who really want to help. Ask for help from the community and you really will get it. People care about these topics deeply and they want to support the action being taken now. So on every topic, there'll be at least one thing that's within the council's control to execute. And then it's the whole council's responsibility to seek out help if needed, and ensure that these things get done and in a timely manner, because emergency. You declared that we're in a climate emergency, and small things like this show that you're acting on it. Planning is necessary and vitally important so that we can reshape our future to be sustainable. But if we don't also act now, we'll fall behind. Sorry, just 1 second. 30 years ago, scientists knew that we had a problem. Decades ago, our council made similar plans and failed to act on it. So thank you for all you're doing to plan our future. It really makes a difference. But in addition, I ask that you also act now. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And you'll be very, very pleased that in Pengreen Park in Corby, where I'm the ward councillor, working with Martin Hammond and Brendan from the shared service, we're planting 400 trees around the park in consultation with the local public, which will also help with the industrial site, which is across the road, some of the smells, whatever. So that's working together in partnership. All that you're asking for, and councils are doing that. So thank you. Paul, any other speakers, please? And thank you, Martin, and your team. Any other speakers, Paul?
Yes, the next speaker is Marley, who I think is with us.
I am indeed.
Hello.
Hi there. Thank you, councillors and officers, for giving me a chance to speak tonight. I've never actually formally addressed the council, but this is a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. My name's Marley Lyman, and I'm the owner of a small furniture painting business in Raunds. The main focus of my business is on sustainability, particularly encouraging people to reduce waste, to repurpose things. And I also ensure that everything I sell is sustainably made, ethically made, and has as low a carbon footprint as possible. I am disappointed, though, that since local councils declared a climate emergency in 2019, I've seen no evidence whatsoever of councils encouraging or incentivizing businesses to prioritize sustainability within their business models. This goes far beyond the whole plastic bags issue. You know, we need businesses to eliminate single-use plastics and packaging, of course, but we also need to drastically reduce carbon wasting imports from the likes of China and India. We need to switch to fully renewable energy suppliers. We need to take positive steps to reduce energy usage within businesses. Many businesses would struggle to achieve these objectives due to the cost implications, but that's where the councils can come in. There are two particularly effective ways that you can have a positive impact on the business approach to tackling the climate crisis. And the first is to incentivize the switchover. You could offer monetary benefits to carbon neutral businesses. You could offer awards to be proudly displayed, even a window sticker or a certificate. You can develop a regulatory body that can determine the level of how climate positive a business is, similar to how the food hygiene rating works. You can provide information on how easy it is for businesses to switch to renewable energy providers. And you can offer advertising incentives to businesses that conform, such as features in local publications, for example. You can provide positive branded paper bags to businesses for free, and then they can hand them out to customers, even if that's just for a limited period until they're able to do it themselves. But the second big point is that you can sanction bad practice. You can make this region a single-use free region under penalty, and you can use penalties to help fund the campaign. You can force supermarkets to join in this as well. Other counties have done it. You can give businesses a switchover deadline for renewable energy. You can pressure the government to implement high tariffs on imports that don't meet adequate environmental standards. And you can penalise businesses that operate in environmentally damaging practices, such as MPB contractors who recently cut down 1,000 trees illegally in Corby without any retribution. A combination of these two approaches would have a positive impact, and it would show the urgency and prove that the council is serious about this issue, all while offering informational and financial support to small local businesses that otherwise might not be able to make the changes. This is a climate emergency. You declared that in 2019, and people don't see the urgency because it looks like the local councils aren't taking it seriously. It is the single most important issue that we're facing on this planet. let's be the change that we need to see. So I look forward to hearing plans of positive change in that area, and I will be watching with very close interest into how you proceed with it. I look forward to the full report, but please do make contact with me directly if you wish to continue with this discussion on a personal level. And thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much, Marley. Paul, anybody else?
Yes, our final speaker on this item is John Padwick, who is with us.
John Padwick, over to you.
You're on mute, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors and officers. I'm really glad the consultation and the time frame for the Task and Finish group has been extended. The issue of the climate emergency isn't one that can be dealt with superficially, but one that should be front and centre of the council. The flooding that's taken place over large swathes of North Northamptonshire recently really underlines this all too well. It's not just once in 100 years, it's a lot more frequent. I'd be interested to know whether the Task and Finish group has looked at practice in other areas. I think it's really important. I mean, I think it is important, as Des has said, to look at what we've got here and homegrown stuff, but I also think it's essential that we look outwards and see what's happening in other places. I wonder if Zoom meetings have taken place looking at good practice in other council areas. For example, have we joined the LGA Climate Emergency Knowledge Hub group? I've looked on there on that site, and only Daventry is actually on their map of showing councils that have declared a climate emergency. Why not the rest of us? There could be the chance to examine how other councils and areas have set up citizens' assemblies. Devon, North Tyne, Oxford, Camden, for example. Encouraging engagement across our area would be seen as a real commitment to inclusion across what could otherwise be seen as a disparate area, a disparate area administered by a distant authority. With regard to planning, I'm assuming that we will feed directly into the review of the joint core strategy. That's really important. In the new reset world, the need for green jobs, green travel plans for councils and others, including schools, for example, is going to be all the more important, and I hope we'll be working on those issues. The pandemic, whilst bringing huge difficulties with it, does also give us the imperative to think things anew and not just go back to the same old. A new council gives us the opportunity to do this all the more, and I really hope we grab this opportunity, not to be fettered by the past, but be champions of the future. Thank you.
Thank you, John Padwick, for that. Anybody else?
Sorry, Chair. John was the last speaker on that item. John, I'm just going to move you back into the meeting room, but you'll be back for the blueprint item. Okay. Waiting room, I should say. Right. No other public speakers, Chair, on this item.
Yeah. So on to item A. Who's speaking on item A then? Climate change.
Martin Hammond's name's on the report, Chair.
Chairman, I was going to defer to Councillor Lorman before I said anything.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Lorman, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I would like to thank our public speakers very, very much. They have brought up very interesting points and points we have also discussed in the work programme that we've gone through so far. It was mentioned extending the deadline for the submissions. That is happening, and obviously we are happy, very, very happy with the 100+ responses that were received up to last week, I understand, into the public email inbox, with all different suggestions of areas we should be looking at. Electric bikes, I understand the program for electric bikes is being extended. I have seen recently a notification from Councillor Smithers, and it's a shame that Councillor Smithers is not able to actually say that, because I'm sure he would have liked to emphasize the importance of the electric bike program. Transport links between communities and villages, absolutely vital. We have discussed that, especially in our last meeting in the Climate Change Task and Finish Group. We had a fantastic report from Andrew Longley and explaining to us also what we can, what we possibly can't do, and areas where we really have to look at. I would hope that, well, the recommendation is being made to the Shadow Authority to actually incorporate those sort of items like transport links, cycle paths, and all that into our recommendations. And the Shadow Authority, there will be a recommendation that a cabinet member will have specific responsibility for climate change, and that should give some comfort to the speakers this evening that this Shadow Authority is taking the matter seriously. The Climate Change Task and Finish Group has done some tremendous work, and we have on our program 2 large items left, one of them being education and employment, and we need the time for that. And obviously our officers need also then, they want to combine the suggestions made into the public email box into one report that we can then hand over to the Shadow Exec to consider. And it's got to be very, very strong recommendations because each one of us has taken the matter in hand very, very seriously. We know that we can't sit there sleeping. Climate change is happening everywhere, but at the same time, I fully understand sometimes the frustration. Perhaps not all the information has been publicized in the way one would wish for on social media. I have seen sometimes people even reverted to putting it on Spotted to encourage responses into our email box. I would like to particularly thank Marley Lyman for his very, very interesting discussions. And if we can share with him also the email inbox, any suggestions he has will be gratefully received. The joint core strategy and planning, those are matters that we have discussed, and we have sought the advice from our experts in the planning system as well of how we can best influence climate change, how we can influence developers in bringing sustainable developments into every single area in North Northamptonshire. I am very grateful that we have got a little bit more time, or we hope to have a little bit more time to give us a final meeting on around the 11th of March. And then, as it said in Mr. Hammond's report, to bring it to the Shadow Executive on the 25th of March. So there is still plenty of time for anybody to put their ideas and thoughts forward. And summing up, the whole committee, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the Task and Finish Group, is very, very grateful for all information that has been submitted. And I know our colleagues from the Blueprint Task and Finish Group have already touched on several areas of climate change as well. So both sides will be putting things like that forward to the Shadow Exec to really make very strong points of what the Shadow Authority and the future Unitary Authority has to address. And that's really all I can add, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Norman. And I think it's the fact that the people spoke today instead of just before the decision's made has allowed us to take on board a lot of what they've got to say. So thank you to all the speakers. We have quite a few members who are on the Task and Finish group. Does anybody want to come in with any comments?
Chair, in this order, Councillor Hakewell, then Councillor Davis.
Yeah, Councillor Hakewell then, please.
Thank you, Mark, and I'm glad you're feeling better and getting better. obviously we will never come to the conclusion of a climate change debate, because day by day the climate changes. So obviously there will be milestones along the pathway, but we have to keep it all the time in our minds. Very much liked Emily's point about planting trees, and your own chairman in the park where you've got some trees planted. What we need to do as a recommendation going through is there needs to be proactive identification of areas where trees can be planted, because it seems we have the desire to do it, and we have volunteers to do it, and we have the Woodland Trust who will provide the trees. So I think a strong recommendation from Scrutiny to North Northants is that we need maps with patches on it, ideally in public land, but also to promote that in other public areas like hospitals and other public estates. So I hope we will do a recommendation around that. Really like the idea of Marley's point about green companies and some form of recognition. Chairman, America seems to be back on track with climate change. So I think that worldwide there may be more of an enthusiasm, if you like, on that. And one of the things that came up at the climate change group was, it was a question of just doing it. We talked about policies that are in place, but actually when it comes down to planning, sometimes we don't have the legislation to actually allow us to do it, or even if we have some ability to do things within planning. Solar panels on warehouse roofs 5 years ago, still no perceptible change. Everybody agreed it was a good idea, but it's still not happening. And Chair, also there was a debate sort of offline which says that the Code for Sustainable Housing, which appeared to be diluted heavily about 5 years ago by the current government, actually the legislation was never enforced. So planning authorities, and Chairman, I'd like this to be taken down somewhere and researched, planning authorities can enforce greater climate or eco-housing standards because the legislation was never enforced. I'm happy to talk to whoever might pick that up, because I think that's quite important in that way. And I think the other thing that we really want, and we've seen it tonight, and at every public climate change meeting, we need some sort of standing advisory committee with some of the people we've seen this evening who have a channel into the Northamptonshire leadership. Because whilst many of them may not wish to become councillors, or may try and may fail, the amount of knowledge that we've seen tonight is so important that I think we ought to also recommend to the executive, and it doesn't have to be a great financial burden, but there is some form of administration of a standing committee on climate change that brings a lot of the people who are interested to come in and move out of council affairs and add their voices and their knowledge, such as we've seen tonight. So I don't know whether Paul or Ben or whoever, but I would hope that when we come to a final conclusion, those recommendations, if agreed by other colleagues, will be on the books. And of course, don't forget the pollinator strategy. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay then, Councillor. Well, that's something that I think that Councillor Lorman and their committee will take on board. I would hope that they look at it, and it's not for me to say whether they will or not, but I'm sure they will look at it. The next speaker, Paul.
Councillor Davis, Chair.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say how much I've enjoyed being on the Climate Task and Finish group. All of us are passionate on member level across all parties. And of course, we've heard some from really, really interesting, knowledgeable officers bringing in their areas of expertise. And it's actually really interesting to see how much climate affects all aspects of policy. And clearly, it's a good opportunity to get things holistic. From housing to planning to infrastructure, it all has to work together with climate at the heart of it. And I'm very confident that what we will come to, at the end of this process, along with all the contributions from the public, is going to build a really solid foundation for the multi-unitary. And I really can't wait to see the culmination of all these efforts to get these results that we all wish to see. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I've talked to other members of the committee who feel the same. Anybody else who wants to speak, Paul?
Yes, Councillor Tickham.
Yeah, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's the flooding that's the problem. So I've said this before some years ago. I keep repeating myself. I feel like a broken record sometimes. That the constant building on floodplains is not going to help the situation of flooding. It's all very well to say that we need houses to build. Yes, we do. But why do we have to pick a floodplain? Because all that does is move the problem further down the stream. And this, as John Padwick said, flooding once in 100 years? No, well, we've had one flood up in Kettering twice. So I must have missed a couple of centuries there. Can we please look or desist from building on floodplains? After all, the name floodplain should give you a hint of why it's there. It's to ease the problem. But it seems like human interference is, well, just adding to the problem we've got. That's it. It's a favourite subject of mine. I'm probably fed up of listening to me, but thank you anyway.
Yeah, thank you. I've just seen a comment from Councillor Lorman that a lot of this stuff we're stuck with is government legislation on floodplains, and maybe we could get in the joint planning unit to talk about how we can have a lobby the government to say, look, we've got to look at this in a different way, and we've got a lot of Conservatives on this group who I'm sure could give us support on that, and I'm sure they will do. Any other speakers, Paul?
Yes, Councillor Mercer wishes to come in.
Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points. First of all, I sit on the Anglia Northern Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, and several years ago I pointed out to the Environment Agency officers that there was strong anecdotal evidence that the modelling which predicts 1 in 100 year events for flooding was flawed, and that those 1 in 100 year events seem to be happening about more likely 1 in 30 years. They said at the time they would go away and fresh modelling would be developed, but I haven't seen any sign of it so far. I still think that there is a major flaw either in the model or in the data that's fed into it. Whether that is because of climate change, I don't know. I'm not an expert on that subject. The modelling seems to have been flawed for some considerable time. I can't answer that question. Next point I would make is that several times I've been on planning committees who have refused planning consent for developments because they were, in our opinion, at high risk of flooding, and then had them overturned on appeal by the Planning Inspectorate. Some quite notorious examples, some of which subsequently flooded. The planning committees are doing their job at this time. The problem is not at that point.
And I think that's the point that Councillor Lorman was trying to get across, that people do put in for planning, they get refused by the people that know, then they go to Bristol or Cardiff, wherever it is, and appeal, and they come back and win, and it's frustrating for old people and all that. Anybody else, Paul?
I can't see anybody else. Any other blue hands raised on this?
Yeah, Councillor Lorman. Councillor Lorman, do you want to come in on what anybody said, or are you quite happy?
Chairman, you're absolutely right. We did discuss building on floodplains, how, and we did ask Andrew Longley directly, how can we as councillors influence that policy to stop this happening, because it's not fair on those people who buy the homes eventually, and the impact also on sewage and wastewater treatment works. It's a complete package, and we were consistently told that because of the current legislation, each one of us really could, the only way to influence it is via our MPs, to lobby the government then to change somehow the legislation. And I can assure you that the core strategy and the officers working on that are just as frustrated when you see the impact it all has. And again, thank you to the individual speakers. I wasn't aware of this flat modeling Councillor Mercer was referring to. So I'd be really interested to see, because we can pass that on to the officers, the expert officers we've had, and trees and so on. We did talk about that as well, but then you have the other side where you've got to maintain, you've got to prune them and everything else. So it's a catch-22, but it would be fantastic to have trees planted by community groups and so on. And the pollinator strategy Councillor Hakewell is referring to is on the list of recommendations.
Yeah, thank you. And a couple of things before we move on. Can I thank Councillor Lee for keeping me updated on loads of things that environmental, and teaching me new things nearly every day. So thank you for that. One thing that I'd like you to take into account is the planning system. And in my job, and not lately, but I drive around Northamptonshire, and you see all these big new urban developments, all with big yellow pipes getting put in that will be fitting gas to properties. Gas, they say, will end in 15, 20 years. And what I'm going to ask Councillor Norman is for a video to be sent to you. It's a shame we can't go visiting places right now, but Electric Corby have done a cracking development that I think your committee should look at. And it's a zero carbon house with heat pumps and everything else. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it. It's absolutely brilliant. And they've built a house in the state, all zero carbon, one of the first in the UK. It's going to be the first in Corby, and I think they're looking at more places to do these. It's a breath of fresh air. And I think we have to start looking at the planning process and saying, look, we don't want gas in these houses. You've got to look at other things. I don't know what kind of leverage we could have on that, but it's something I think we should look at in the future. So thank you all very much.
Chair, Councillor Tickham wishes to come in again.
Yeah, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. As you may gather from some what I'm going to say, I do come from building stock. I am a builder by trade, but since retired, obviously. But there is experimentation on hand about building, believe this or not, plastic houses, and I don't mean Lego bricks either. By all accounts, the theory of them is that a house can be produced in a day and a half, and all we need is a concrete slab with services connected. At the moment, I've heard more about it, but it would need about 4 factories, and we could build a lot. Unfortunately, plastic is a byproduct of petrol, so we've got another bit of a problem there. But the theory is perfectly sound, and that coming from me is a wonderment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Chair. I think you can move on to the recommendations for a mover and a second. Chair.
Yeah, and the recommendations, Paul, remind me, because there's so much paperwork in front of me.
Okay, the recommendations are to agree the new timetable with a final report due to be submitted to this
Yeah, I've got that now, yeah. And to note progress made today with the likely shape of the strategy. Thank you very much. Is that agreed by everybody?
Move it.
Second.
Aye.
Right, that's carried. Well done, everybody. So the next item is a blueprint.
Yes, and we need to bring one of our speakers back in, which is Mr. Padwick. So if you just give me a moment, Chair, and I'll invite him back in. Right. John, can you hear us okay? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, Chair, Mr. Padwick's here to speak on the blueprint item.
John, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors and officers. I appreciate that planning wasn't one of the issues the Task and Finish group particularly focused on, so I think I'm being a bit cheeky here. But I would be interested to know how this is going to be handled across the new council. Will there be one committee that will deal with applications across Northamptonshire, or has thought been given to subcommittees dealing with applications from each of the former boroughs? I'm concerned that local knowledge should be part of the determination process, and that this is one of the areas where the public are directly involved and where the council will need to be ready from the get-go. Again, I'd once again like to underline the need for engagement with local communities, as there is a danger that this new and important council could be seen as distant and unapproachable. How will that engagement, that local knowledge, that understanding of local communities within which the planning applications sit, how will that be overcome?
John, thanks for that. It's a question that I've been asking for a long time. How could somebody from Ruston make a decision on a block of flats coming down and bungalows being built on Stevenson's Way in Corby? And it is that local knowledge. Yeah, thank you for that. So who's speaking on the blueprint then, Paul?
Right, I will move Mr. Padwick out of the meeting now. Sorry, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Padwick. I don't know if Councillor Harrison is introducing this, or yes, Councillor Harrison is introducing this.
Yep.
Councillor Harrison, welcome, and over to you. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, very happy to take this. As chair of the Task and Finish group, I'd like to first of all thank the other members, Councillors Henley, McEwen, Perry and Rowley, for their time and their contributions to those meetings. And I'd like to thank the officers who came and brought their expertise and understanding of the 3 areas that we chose to look at, to allow us to look in more detail at the blueprint, how it works, and to gain some assurance that on day 1 and beyond, it is all going to fit together and work. And I have to say that there was a great deal of assurance. There felt like there was a lot of working together across the current councils to make sure that all of this is going to work. Everybody knew what they were going to be doing, where they were going to be doing it from, and how. So that was great. And I have to say, it was actually really it was actually quite fun and very interesting to take a little bit of a dive into the 3 areas that we chose. Because you know, you've all read that blueprint, and it's a fairly dry document, and it takes a bit of, you know, after you've read the first bit, you go on to the next bit and all seems very familiar and the same and not terribly exciting. But actually, when you go into the different areas and get some of the information behind all of that, you start to really see how the disaggregation and aggregation is all going to work, and the thoughts and the planning and everything that has gone behind that. So, you know, it was very interesting and really worthwhile exercise to do. Now, we chose 3 different areas to look at because the blueprint's enormous. It covers every single service that the new council is going to cover. For our little group to have looked at every single part of that would have probably just meant skimming the surface and not gaining any real insights into what was going on. So in our first meeting, we decided what we were going to look into, and we chose to look at housing standards in both the public and private sector, waste collection and disposal and the harmonization and integration of those services across the new council, and public health and how it will influence all aspects of the work of the new council. And I'm going to actually start with the public health and well-being bit, even though that was the last bit we looked at, because I think it, along with the other areas we looked at, but particularly public health, it meshes in very nicely with the climate change group and equalities, all areas in which we need to make sure that we are basing our policy decisions around and making sure that we are improving across our area. And so firstly, we just wanted to pass on, hopefully, to the Executive Council the importance we felt there was around embedding health and well-being at the heart of all policy decision making. After all, local council really is all about delivering on public health and well-being. That is what we're here for. And so we just wanted to put that across. From what we can see from the blueprint, that is wired in to an extent, but a lot of it will depend on each area of the council being able to independently take that up rather than being continually prompted and pushed and made to do that. So the sort of health in all policies agenda we would like to see become really integrated seamlessly and without too much effort. What we don't want to see is a policy being made and then a health impact statement stapled on at the end. We want to see all of that, as well as the climate change and equalities implications, meshed in right from the word go when policies are being developed. So I'd really like that to go as something to go forward to the exec for their consideration. I know it is in there, I know it is being thought about and considered, but it's all too easy when you're thinking about a policy, be it, say, bus services, to look at it from the point of view of what's affordable and what can be delivered, and not necessarily think about the sort of social isolation issues, which is a health and well-being issue, or can people get to work if we don't have that bus service? What are the implications for climate and inequalities? So I think all of those things could be brought in much better at an earlier stage, and I hope that our new council will be doing that. Sort of on a practical front, we thought that the adult community hubs could be very much utilised for public health and well-being services. That's quite probably going to happen, but I couldn't see that necessarily in the blueprint, and I hope that will happen, because the more we can bring services together and make sure they're really meshed and really working together and seamlessly, the better. We felt that developing local data gathering in order to be basing our health and well-being strategies on what's actually happening on the ground, you know, almost street by street, but certainly ward by ward, is going to be really vital. There's no point delivering, you know, an underage pregnancies strategy in the middle of, you know, in a retirement area. It's really important that we're getting the right strategies in the right places. We use a lot of nationally developed data that's quite out of date, and so we believe that finding, you know, developing really good local data is going to be key to improving our areas and developing services that are going to be properly targeted to our communities. We really thought that it's going to be important to reduce any health barriers towards using some of our facilities that we have locally. So, for example, we have some amazing country parks in our area, but the car parking charges are really high. We already know that for many people that's going to be unaffordable, and they are often the very same groups that have the poorest health, both physical and mental health. So strategies to reduce those barriers to those services and being able to access those things is going to be really important. And we had a really interesting presentation from our Director of Public Health on developing wellbeing measures to go alongside more hard GDP measures in order to be, again, seeing the effect that we're having on our local populations, and we felt that was going to be important too, and obviously working with our voluntary sector better. Sorry to rattle through this so fast, but that was some of the things that we came through from the public health discussions we had. And I think you can probably see from that you can't really separate it out from the climate change issues or the equality issues, because they all work. They're all part and parcel of the same thing. If you improve climate, you're improving health. If you're improving health and people are able to make better decisions for themselves, you're probably going to help to improve on issues like climate change. So that was why I started there, because I thought it meshed particularly well with the climate change group. The next area we looked at was housing, and again we wanted to see that that the housing services and the people running those services were again going to work across the council, work with public health and work with all the other council areas to make sure that we're running things as efficiently and getting the best possible outcomes there. We thought that looking at best practice across the country to deliver better housing stock in terms of design and energy efficiency was going to be very important. There are some amazing examples of council built projects across the country, and I think we should be learning from that. Just going slightly to one side in terms of planning and planning policy, I do believe that it is possible for us to to develop our own strict design principles that we think that this council should adhere to in making planning decisions. So I don't see why we can't bring in climate change issues and good design policy making into as part of something we expect and as a blueprint for how we decide on whether a planning application should be passed or not. The other issue I thought was really important that came out from our discussion on housing was disabled facilities grants. There's a huge demand for them and quite a lot of delays in the system in getting them out. There's obviously also a financial problem there with the number of people requiring them. But when you use the disabled facility grant well, you create massive beneficial effects to people's health and social care. And it's something that if we can deliver these things well, will have a profound impact further in other parts of the council. So we'd like the council to really put that as a big priority, getting those disabled facilities grants delivered as efficiently and as effectively as possible. I'm going to rattle on again. Sorry about how fast I'm talking. In terms of our discussions of waste, one thing that came out really strongly was that the lack of waste infrastructure in our area and the importance of working to improve our long-term and sustainable provision of that, probably working alongside our neighbours in West Northamptonshire. As our waste collections are going to be harmonised across the area, there's going to be differences between the different areas. So green bins and bins that are for the same type of collection might be different colours, for example, in different areas. And as that slowly gets replaced over time, I think we're going to need to make sure there's really clear communication with the public so they know what's being collected when. I think there was something else that I wanted to say. Yes, we need to look different parts of different councils at the moment have different policies on green waste collection, and I think the cost and benefits of that needs to be weighed up really fully before we decide what the policy is going to be across the area. So sorry, that was a real whiz through, but you can see that we had a lot of really interesting conversations and managed to sort of ask a lot of questions and come up with a lot of thoughts. And on that whistle-top tour, I'm going to stop and let people ask their questions.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Very, very comprehensive, and it's amazing how some of the things link, because we talked about the disabled adaptations as part of the budget, and there was a bit of an underspend, and some of that is because of occupational therapists being thin on the ground or whatever. And the other bit was to do with health. I've been a little bit worried about right now all the figures that are done on our boroughs. So Corby's figures, Kettring's figures, soon will all be one. So even with the COVID figures right now, Corby, Kettering, Wellinbury, East Northampton are all separate. In 12 weeks' time, there'll be one for North Northamptonshire. And I'm happy that you've looked at how we're going to put that down into little areas. And in the past, places like Kingswood in Corby and my own area in Corby, we've had single regeneration budget money, we've had the state action money because of the deprivation in some of these areas. So I'm happy in what you're saying is they're going to look at areas, even streets, on what they can do. So thank you for that. Any questions to Helen or comments if people want to make?
Chair, we have Councillor Henley and then Councillor Hakewell.
Councillor Henley.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And thank you, Helen, for her very detailed update. Members of the committee won't be surprised to know that I wanted to focus on waste disposal, and because I'm sure some of them think I've been talking rubbish for years. But anyway, moving on. No, so I wanted to talk about this one because I was aware that there are some key parts coming up in this arena that will have major impacts for our residents. And one of the key strategic decisions needs to be made fairly soon on the Wellingborough bin collection. The current contract with Norse ends at the end of February next year, and we need to make a decision fairly soon as to which way we go. And that will have implications for years as to how we proceed as a council, as to whether we keep it in-house or whether we keep it outside. And that's a challenge that we will have to make as a council fairly soon. It is also, as Helen said, that it is also a space whereby we do have different service offerings across the 4 areas, and that's going to be quite a difficult sell, given the fact that they're all having to pay the same council tax because we're immediately harmonising. So that's going to be one for the comms people to try and work on, because that's going to be quite a challenge, if I'm honest. I was disturbed when the officers at the time said they hadn't received their final budgets. I'm not looking at Janice now, but I'm hoping that work has now proceeded so that everyone does now have their final budgets, although we haven't actually set the final budget. So I guess it's all still a work in progress. But there are still, even in the challenging areas, there are some opportunities available if we invest to ensure that we do it properly. And Helen is quite right in the fact that we don't really have a material recycling facility in the county at the moment. And I went to one in Peterborough many years ago as a young councillor, and I don't believe that we've got anything of that quality locally. And the sooner we have one, the better. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Adam. I'll ask anyone else and then I'll let Helen come in at the end. So anybody else?
Councillor Hakewell, then Councillor Mercer, Chair.
Councillor Hakewell.
Thank you, Mark. I'd like to thank Helen for allowing me to observe. It was the most uncomfortable experience to go through a whole meeting without saying anything. But thank you for allowing me to do that because it was informative. I'd just like Helen to say we really do need to look at that code for sustainable housing, because I think, as I said before, the government did put ideas forward but never enacted them. So I think right from now we have the ability to push and force for more sustainable housing, and I hope you'll pick that up, or officers or someone will do. The title of waste I totally understand, but it doesn't give the same preference to recycling, and recycling or reuse is obviously very important. The seminal thing that I heard some months ago, maybe a year ago, is that when Kettering and Corby wanted to put out the contract for recyclates, we only got one bidder. And in that circumstance, given that Africa and Asia are now rejecting so-called recyclates and not accepting them, China particularly, that is a phenomenally risky aspect for everything we talk about recycling, because whether or not it's in our county or someone else's county, there are real financial issues. And I know that Kettering stumbled on its budget for what it expected to sell recyclates for, because the market just dropped away. So I really think that whatever we say, it's going to be about how we dispose of or reuse those recyclates. One bidder and you have Hobson's choice is not good for the revenue account. And on public health, item 7 in 5.54, voluntary sector. Really pleased that you've put that into your report, which I think does cover those issues. We have a phenomenal resource which has come to the fore during COVID in relation to public health of the whole voluntary sector, all those groups and organisations that existed and some didn't exist but came together to look after the public health of everyone and the neighbourliness and so on. So I really think there needs to be something in Northamptonshire's DNA which says we embrace, we welcome, and we want to make the voluntary sector as sustainable as it can be. Certainly, having been on the county council, the voluntary sector got a lot of good words, but was the first to be cut back. And organisations like Home Start and so on only need a bit of seed funding, which they can multiply. But it tended to be the one area that got cut back because they weren't under our control, and often they could try and get funding elsewhere. But overall, yeah, the blueprint is coming forward, and I totally agree with Mark about planning. We really have to do something about making planning more fit for purpose.
Yeah, thank you for that. Next one is, did you say Councillor Messer, Paul?
Yes.
Yeah, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to consider a long-term change in the culture of how we handle waste in the county. For those who don't know, we have the only nuclear waste dump, I think perhaps in the world, that's in clay pits in our area. The Kingscliff waste facility dumps low-level nuclear waste into clay pits and then covers them up. That stuff is going to be unpleasant for hundreds of years. That is not the way you should be doing things, but that has been forced upon us. Similarly, we have our waste processing facilities typically in urban areas. Now, that does protect the open countryside, but it's not very nice for the people who live near there. Corby in particular has suffered from this, and so has Rushton. Now, we need to rethink this whole area. The bits that the government edicts on us, we can't touch, but there is a refresh of the local waste and minerals plan coming up at some point. And when it comes forward, we need to rethink it completely and make as a priority keeping the unpleasant stuff sufficiently far away from where people live and work. The way we've done it in the last 10 years has not been the right way to do it.
Thank you very much for that. Anybody else, Paul?
I can't see anybody. I don't know if Councillor Harrison wants to come back into.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm going to. Councillor Harrison, over to you.
Yes, thanks, and thanks for those comments. I think Jim, Councillor Hakewill, you're quite right that, that there was only one bidder who came forward. We talked about that in the Task and Finish group meeting. And I think I can say reasonably confidently that it's well understood that we need to pursue the infrastructure available to us as a really high importance. Andy, I think your comments are well made. We've now got this opportunity, I think, to really rethink how we deliver those services and where we put that infrastructure and how we manage it. And that's really going to be something that should be, hopefully all of us here, all of us councillors here are going to be back here after the election, and we're going to be able to push for that and add our voice to the policy decisions. But I think that from the conversations we had, I think that is well understood. And I think that it is a priority for the new council, but it's obviously something we want to keep an eye on and make sure is done as well as possible. And of course, it needs to be done with the consent of local people as well. You're right. You rightly point out, Andy, that some of these recycling or some of these facilities, waste disposal facilities, are in quite built up areas, and they do cause issues for our residents, and so that needs to be really well thought out in the future. I agree with that. So thank you for putting up with my very rapid and very wordy report. I'm very grateful for that. And if it's okay, Chair, what I'd like to propose is that we just send our report as it is, as a whole, to the exec, and let them have a look at it and see what we thought. I think the whole of the report's important. So I'd like the report to go to the exec, if that's okay.
Yeah, and Helen, will you speak to it at the exec? Is that okay?
Happy to.
Yeah, thank you. Is that agreed by everybody? Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, it looks like consent, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. And
thank you.
Right, so the budget. Who's presenting this info?
Chair, we have our final public speaker, who hopefully is still in the waiting room. Alison Holland, who wishes to address the committee on this item. Let me just bring Alison.
Welcome, Matt.
Yeah, Alison's with us.
Welcome, Alison. Thank you for waiting about, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I've just turned my YouTube off.
Are you okay, Alison?
Yeah, shall I start?
Yeah, yes, please. Yeah,
sorry,
through the
apologies.
chair. Through the
I've
chair.
got that intro. Good evening, everybody. My name's Alison Holland. I'm from Bright Kids Social Enterprise in Kettering and also a resident of Geddington. Tonight, I just wanted to ask a question about the budget. It does actually also relate to climate and blueprint, so it kind of touches on all three, but budget's the area I've chosen to put it in with. First of all, I'd like to say I think it's fantastic that you've published the budget and put budgets out there for public consultation, giving the chance to the public to speak, and I really hope that these virtual opportunities to speak will continue after COVID. I've seen the budget report only this week, and I did actually put in my request to speak earlier this week before I saw the budget report, and I do note that it's about children, adult and housing services. My question does relate to those, but it is more about a wider budget issue. My interest is in transport and sustainable active transport and promoting that within the council, within the county. It's so important for health, air quality, reducing road casualties, access to employment, access to country parks, as was mentioned earlier. So my question is, where is the transport and highways budget? This is like the how much is going to be spent on buses, pothole repairs, cycle infrastructure, road safety education, community minibus services. I've actually asked 3 members, all from different political parties, and none of them have been able to tell me this, but I think it's something that's really important that the public need to know what is intended with transport and highways. When and how and where will the public have a say on this? And also, I would like to say it's fantastic how we're starting to see some really great changes, certainly in Kettering, with the Voi scooters and the e-bikes. And I really hope that this is the beginning of building something really great. So my second question is also, can you reassure me that this is a priority and that we are really going to build on this and see this as a leading example across the country for everybody's benefit? Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, but thank you. As chair of scrutiny, I can't reassure you of everything because I'm not in decision-making position, of course. So thank you for speaking. And Paul, what's the next part of this? Can an officer respond?
Well, what I'll do is,
that'll be noted.
Alison, I'll remove you back to the waiting room. Okay. So first of all, thank you. On that specific point, I'll maybe have to leave it to one of my finance colleagues. I drafted the report, but I didn't know if Councillor Henley, who chaired the sessions wanted to say a few words as opener, and if anybody likes to come in.
Happily. And I'm not going to try and answer those questions either, because that's the level of detail we never saw, I'm afraid. I'd like to start by apologising to the rest of the committee for the lateness of the papers. As you probably may have noticed, we've actually been, we had a scoping meeting literally just before Christmas. We've had 4 meetings in the past fortnight, so I thank all those on the committee for attending, because it was quite a semi-hard slog, but we got through as best as we can. We haven't taken the whole budget. It's just too big to eat. So what we've had to do is take chunks of the budget and review them as best we can. The HRA is it was an eye-opener for me as a Wellingborough councillor who hasn't seen any housing stock now for 15 years. But it is quite well funded, and there are some opportunities for synergy. There is, however, still £110 million of long-term loans on the accounts. Now, they will be funded and paid for over the next 40 years, but it's just something that councillors need to be aware of. It's something that's going to be there for longer than most of us. I'm just speaking for myself, clearly. But no, so it was also clear from the challenge of the questions that there's large numbers in the plan, but there's no real grounding to the plan yet. So that clearly still needs to happen. Things such as a capital programme, there are numbers there, but they're placeholders, and that needs to really progress so that we can hopefully start in April with a strong start to the year. I'm going to take the next 2 together because they are very much linked: adults and children's social care. They're both demand-led services, and again, there's going to be clear challenges in this space. An interesting point made at the adults services section was that they are funded, they are 25th out of 26 funded across the Shire counties in that benchmarking group, whereas adults is 4th, children's is 4th. And you can clearly see that that's been a deliberate decision to try and ensure that we get some progress in the children's space, but that has had implications. There are looking at changes of working, and we had a presentation here only 3 months ago now on stronger, better working, and the officers were able to confirm that they have seen progress in that space, but they still can't give me a baseline, so they can't provide me with stats, which means that I've only got anecdotes as to how well it's working for this stage, and we do need to move past that now. In that space, there is only £3.2 million of contingency, and based on a budget of £150 to £160 million, that's only 2%. So it's quite a tight area, and it will remain a tight area for the finances across the next year. And if anybody attended the LGA training last week, organised by the LGA, the main presenter there did warn that children's trusts can feel like a blank check. Now, obviously, we have contracts in place and we have a scrutiny plan in place, but the reality is we do need to ensure that we have full control over that. And then we come to the meeting from this week on fees and charges. As the minutes show, I raised queries about the fees and charges, and I had concerns about the quality of the fees and charges. And at the time we were told that things would be better. I did work with Sean offline to ensure. Sorry, apologies, someone's trying to get hold of me. I did work with Sean offline and we got a better report at the meeting on Tuesday, but this then highlighted concerns that the whole committee had about the fees and charges space. The detail that went out in the public arena was, the information's there, but you would have to do what I tried to do, whereby you've had to check for yourself what the previous charge was and establish what the new charge is. And on that basis, any respondents on the fees and charges will be quite limited, because I don't believe people have done that work. There are concerns around a number of the charges especially in the license cabbie, let's call them taxis, let's be clear, in the taxi arena, because of the size of the increase at a time when obviously traffic is down as a result of all of the other issues around. So I know that following the meeting, there's been discussions offline about where we go with this. My feeling is that we need to progress further in this space because the fees and charges still have some work to go. The final point is that we were hoping to hold a session tonight with the public, and as you'll notice, the meeting was cancelled and nobody came forward. I'm a bit disappointed by that. I don't know how widely it was published. I know I put it on my Twitter, but I don't imagine everyone rushes to my Twitter to establish what's going on with North Northants. I think that that's something that we should definitely really push for next year, whoever's in charge and whoever's running the scrutiny, because we've only really had one person asking a question on one small part of the budget tonight that we can't answer because no one in that meeting had the detail. And that's all I have for now, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. Anybody want to make any observations or comments on the budget?
You have Councillor Hakewell followed by Councillor Mercer, Chair.
Councillor Hakewell first.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Adam, for your chairmanship. Whilst I was equally upset that no one came forward, I will guarantee you that in March, many residents will come forward with comments on the budget on receipt of their council tax bill. Three things. Chester Farm. I wrote to every executive member and in fact some of the leader officers about my concerns about the fragility of the Chester Farm budget. It's only held up by massive subsidies from Northamptonshire and a lot of very aspirational incomes from places like schools. Didn't get a single reply, so at least I will bring it up again. It does seem like a sort of 1980s vanity project, which we just cannot afford in Northamptonshire at this particular time. I don't know whether my email and letter got any traction anywhere, but I would advise anyone to look at that budget for Chester Farm and tell me that it is in any way substantial or viable, not least of which with visitors and COVID coming forward. I think that's very disappointing. With social care, adults and children's, Adam Chairman, you've already made some comments about that. But I can sincerely say, and anyone else who's been on the county council, the budget for children's and adults exhibits all the same risks that happened before. Things like social workers being agency, not employed, with aspirations to bring them in as employed as much more economic social workers, both children's and adults. Adam's mentioned the contingency of 3.2 million is less than inflation, and you know that needs to be taken into account. And I also think in that budget we are going to find younger adults who are going to be needing our care, and remember that's what we're about, for much longer with the effects of COVID, which we already know from the earliest people who caught it. There are long-term issues with COVID. So I do think that the budget, which is 18 million short anyway, still has a gap of 10 million, really is not substantial, and it exhibits the same problem, exponential demand-led demand and reducing resources in that way. And the last thing I would make is that whilst in various meetings, rural, town and parish councils have been assured that there would not be changes to their budgets this year, we have completely failed to recognise that in Kettering, town and parish budgets, lots of activities which take place in other parts of the county are carried out by the town and parish council budgeted for, and their council tax is suitably less. Within the Kettering area, we're told that those services will not be dumped on town and parish councils, but I actually think we should have looked at town and parish council budgets and compared services to make sure that we weren't paying double. And for example, the other night in Rothwell, we put £9,000 into the budget for election expenses, which other parishes do, but we're also paying through the harmonised council tax the 40,000 in Kettering Borough that we've paid since 1974 to fund elections. Massive double taxation. What also worries me there in the budget is that when we need to find the extra 10 million, that will be the unitary saying to the town and parish, we don't do those services. Look at Oundle or Thrapston, they all do it for themselves, but with no rebate from the council tax. So I'm concerned about the budget, and all I can do is to make the point. Whether anyone's listening, who knows? Thank you, Adam, again for your chairmanship, and thank you, Mark, for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to speak?
Councillor Mercer, then Councillor McEwen.
Okay, Councillor Mercer, over to you.
Thank you. First point I'd make is that it's been, in my experience, from certainly in my area, the town and parish councils have to pay for their own election expenses and have to put aside items in the budget, and the district council pays for district level expenses, election expenses. I'm not aware that there was ever a situation where the district was paying for the parish and town council elections. Right, now, 2 points I'd like to make about the budget discussion. First of all, the risks from COVID for adults and children's social services, I think, are perhaps greater than has been concluded. Because, first of all, there's long COVID going to affect our clients, but it's also going to affect our staff. And until we know how effective the vaccination program is going to be at reducing the transmission of the disease and its impact on individuals who get it, we won't know how serious our staff absence levels are going to be over the next 6 months. And that might mean that we may have to take on additional temporary staff. So there is a significant risk there that should go in the risk register. And I agree with the previous speakers that the contingency that has been allowed there seems to me to be a little bit on the low side. I would have been more comfortable with contingency as high as 5% in a year when we've got so many question marks about what's going to happen. Perhaps 5% is fairly risk averse, but it's an exceptional year that we've got coming. Second point, more detailed one, is that with the changes that are going to happen to the taxi licensing systems in particular, where very different license fees are going to be harmonised in a very short period of time, it would be reasonable to consult the taxi drivers' trade associations across the area. We normally do that when there is a change in either the license fees or their terms or the conditions. Those are the points I'd like to make.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Weston. Next one, Paul.
Councillor McEwen wishes to come in.
Councillor Peter McEwen.
You're on mute, Councillor McEwen.
How's that?
Fine.
Okay. Since Councillor Mercer touched on something about consultation with the Taxi Association, one of the things I would like to ask, all these things, the bulk waste collection, is there going to be an increase on these collections? That's, you know, they've got building control, local land charges, pre-planning applications, taxi licence, house and multi-occupancy licences, and the crematorium and cemeteries, are these going to be increased?
Yes.
If so, by how much? And that goes for the rest of the one in paragraph 2, fairs and circus pit patches. How much is it going to be increased? And if so, can we get a note how much they are going to increase? And what's the difference between the four councils that's going into the unitary, what they charge compared to the other 3?
Yeah, thanks.
Can I have that information? Can I have that information?
Yeah, Peter. Yeah, thanks for that. I'll come in now because there is a situation here where I've looked through the fees and charges, and I would say over 80% of the fees and charges for the people of Corby who I represent at the moment have gone up above and beyond more than anybody else. Without touching taxis in any way whatsoever, I'll just give you an example. Just for the cemetery figures, a headstone's gone from £105 to £200. A burial's gone from £585 to £700. We're going into a new authority where we got told from day one for the people that we represent that don't worry, it will just seem like any other day. You won't even know anything has changed. And the people that I represent and you represent, Peter, would be paying more on everything. And what we've always done, and maybe it's something to do with little councils, we've went out and consulted with groups and organisations that be affected. We'd consult with the Friends of Shireland Cemetery, put things on the notice board, let people know. This consultation, officers have worked really, really hard, but there's I tried looking for, as I went on to the website as a member of the public today to try to get the information, and Adam touched earlier that what we need was now on impossible. So how can Mrs. Jones, who lives on Simpson's Way, find that information out? And I know how difficult it's been for officers, and it's just something that I'm disappointed about. It's a strange budget, this, of course, because normally we'd be sitting around this table saying you should be cutting these libraries, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. This is what we're looking at for a new authority, and so it's different. We haven't yet even had a discussion how we're going to find this £8 million or £20 million. We're not too sure what it is. As a council, we've not looked at assets. I mentioned the other day about Longtown. Where will Longtown fit into this? It's something we own in Herefordshire. Will that go into the income from that? Will that go into the west or the north? There's One Angel Square. Where will the burden that fall down on, or the positives for that come into? So there's so many different things that haven't yet been taken into account. And then, of course, the signing off the books. There are several councils in North Northamptonshire and the county as well, I believe, that haven't had their accounts signed off for several years. There could be big things found there that aren't right, and there could be some big spends that the officers have to take into account. So a lot of work's gone into this, but there's still a lot of questions that need answered, and hopefully as the next few weeks go on we can get more answers. Any further questions?
I think Councillor McEwen wanted to come back in, Chair.
Thank you. Peter?
Thank you, Chair. Does that mean that with the increase in the cost of digging a hole, that the person who's digging the hole is going to get a massive pay rise?
Well, the burial prices...
That's an awful dink from what's charged to what it's going to be charged now.
Yeah, well, at the budget seminar, I got told it was an enhanced service. I don't know how you can.
How can you enhance a hole?
Digging a hole a bit, but that's where we are, Peter, and this has got a little bit of to go yet on the budget setting process, and hopefully
a lot to go on.
Yeah, I have had, and just moving on a little bit, several questions asked to the committee from Councillor Stanbury, especially around the housing revenue account, and I just want to make sure that officers take them into account before the next meeting. Any other questions?
Councillor Hakewell wishes to come in again.
Councillor Hakewell.
Yeah, I really just wanted to come back for Councillor Andy Mercer. In 1974, Kettering took on most of the services of the then rural district council, including the running of elections. So residents in Kettering Borough have paid for the elections of town and parishes through their Kettering Borough precept. We were told categorically there would be no change to the town and parish precepts, but now that has come about. An extra £40,000 worth of election expenses has been put on to the town and parish councils this year, which we never paid for before, but we haven't seen a rebate in the Kettering Borough precept. So the interesting thing I'd like to know is the 40,000 that would have been there had we had no change is still being levied through the council tax, but now we have a double taxation because it's being levied on the town and parish councils. Totally understand in Wellingborough, Corby and East Northants, that has not been the case because the parish councils have always done that. So I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, Councillor Haycourt, you've raised this matter several times at this committee. My advice to you is to write to Rob Bridge, the new Chief Executive and the leader of North Northants, putting your points forward and see what the answer comes back from them, because this committee can't make any decision on this, of course. I think you've got to ask the Chief Executive and the leader, who I'm sure will listen to what you've got to say and give you an answer accordingly. Any other comments?
Yeah, and I would come in here and say that the Shadow Executive have already made a specific decision on that matter, and there was an opportunity for councillors or public to address the committee when they did so.
Yeah, thanks for that, Paul. Okay, any other comments, questions?
I don't know whether any of my finance colleagues are very quiet. I don't know if any of them wish to come in and say something. I think Janice may wish to.
Well, welcome, Janice. And as I said, I think we all thank you all for all your hard work in what is a very, very new kind of budget setting meeting for you. So over to you, Janice.
It's a new kind of budget setting meeting, and it's a new kind of budget. I'll have to say that as well as I go through that. And thank you very much, councillors, for your comments and queries, and also for the scrutiny as well, because we do appreciate that. Believe it or not, it may not appear like it, but we certainly do. So I think there's a couple of things probably to pick up. Just to mention that the budget is actually balanced. That report went in January, so there isn't a gap in the budget at this point in time. That was updated as part of the January report to Shadow Executive. A number of items there that help balance that 10 million gap that was referred to earlier, particularly around business rates, some changes with data clarification for social care, and some changes as well coming out of the settlement from government. So we have got a balanced budget now. But what I think I probably do take away from this, and we take it very seriously, is about the fees and charges element. And I absolutely have acknowledged the extent of your concern over that, and in particular some of the areas. But we will take that back, and certainly we'll be looking at that. And these will feed into the next Shadow Executive, and we'll pick that up at that point at the Shadow Executive meeting. But certainly your comments are duly noted, and the significance of your concerns in that area.
Thank you very much. So there's no further questions. Just trying to find where we are. What's the recommendations, Paul? Is it
well,
the committee?
Really, if the committee are happy that the points that are detailed in paragraph, sorry, you're losing me for the moment. That the points that are within point 5 of the report are forwarded to the Shadow Executive, and obviously there are some additional queries and points that have been made tonight that we can incorporate.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. And is that agreed with everybody? A little bit of a wave or whatever. Well done, Ash. It's all yours. Thank you.
Can I just put an abstention in?
Take Councillor Davis and Councillor Mercer as moving and seconding.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I just want to abstain, Chair.
Okay, you can abstain all you want. So we're now going on to the programme status presentation. Is that Lisa?
It is indeed. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. And good evening, members. So we're now on to the North Northamptonshire Director of Transformation update, a regular report that you receive that follows on from the governance process through to executive, to enable members of overview and scrutiny to look through the same information. As has been reflected in a number of times in the last few months since I've started to bring this programme status summary, we bring forward the shadow executive meeting from nearly a month before. However, what I have done is put in some extra slides this time to bring you up to date. So you will see that we've got the status summary, but I cover a bit around change management, communication and engagement. Then I just want to talk you through the update since that shadow executive, and more importantly, the progress. Some information around the critical deliverables that we're working on now, particularly at the position we're in now, the last sort of nine weeks before vesting day. So we're moving into that new Northamptonshire position and ensuring it's safe and legal, and really concentrating on those critical deliverables that I just want to talk you through. So looking at that progress status summary, as I say, it's important that is a copy of what went to the shadow executive on the 7th of January. You will see that we had at that point 2 greens and a range of ambers. And the reason why I wanted to focus on the critical deliverables really is because as we move into this last stage of the programme and ensure that things are safe and legal, it's really important that we don't just be presenting to you a sea of ambers, which is the risk at this point. And when I come down to talk about the critical deliverables later on, I'll explain how we are literally focusing on those now on a day-to-day basis with the Strategic Delivery Director, so that we're absolutely clear that through those programmes, which you'll be familiar with, the titles Place, Finance, Corporate, Children's, Adults, ICT, Customer Contact and Digital, they each now have a list of critical deliverables that have been built and we are working through, and that's moving on a day-to-day basis. So just covering the change managers update there, just to bring you up to speed with a little bit around some of the things that help to reassure and to reinforce the change that's going on across a range of, 8 authorities coming together. So there are a number of things there, particularly around supporting staff through new IT changes, making sure that staff, such as exampled here, engage trading standards colleagues, to understand how disaggregation applies to their service, to help them manage that impact of change. As you'll know, in services that were purely county council services are now being disaggregated and split across the north and the west. And then the aggregation of services that were predominantly the district and borough services will happen after the 1st of April, after vesting day. You'll also see that we have now supported the move to MS365. All of the authorities in the north, you will be assured now, have gone through that process. Just NCC, the last one on the list. So NCC is the last one to move through that migration leading up to vesting day. We also have supported the North Engine Room. As I'm sure you can imagine, we do not have many staff who are now operating from a base. We're working as members are now, and we're only using that base for very critical services or things where staff do need to come, but most of us are operating from home at the moment. So although we pulled together the North Engine Room and we've got the storyboard and the arranged filming for the engine room, we are very much working from home at the moment. Change managers, really important this, because it replies and gives you a feel of the employee feedback, and you will see down that employee feedback that the first 3 items there relate to the change that's going on in the tiers 1 to 3 that you'll be aware of, and the recruitment processes, and the feedback that we were getting from managers and some members, particularly the one around the concern of experts, subject matter expert knowledge across the authorities, and to ensure that that is retained. And the you said is the feedback, and the we did is obviously the actions that have been taken since that feedback. We also, and I think this is an important one, you've talked about looking at some of the blueprint earlier. There was a lot of questioning around the operational aspects of services that were led either by the North or West, or hosted which could be for less than 12 months or greater than 12 months after vesting day on behalf of the other authorities. And then, of course, there are, as I say, those services that are disaggregated completely to the north and west. So we've improved our communications around that to make sure that staff are aware of what the meanings. The next slide just covers some communications engagement. I'd hope that you as members now are starting to see those things coming through. You will have seen some of the comms that the two chief execs are doing, the blogs, the work that we're doing to get bulletins out to members, you up to date of the changes that are happening on a regular process. And that slide just lists through some of that. So since the 7th of January, and what updates can we bring on progress? You'll see that the adults progress on the 1st was all in green, but we are still working on adults to ensure that the ICT system Eclipse is split to ensure that we have a clean working arrangements for that system for those staff that are working on adult services both in the north and in the west. We have now completed the support services, which is the support services for the Children's Trust, and that dependency assessment is now complete, and recruitment for senior roles in children's is underway. We are working with the trade union on engagement regarding the staff terms and conditions for the north. And we also, and we'll come through the governance process in the shadow executives coming forward, you'll start to see the inter-authority agreements between the north and west. So they're those agreements that I talk about for those hosted services and lead services going forward, for those periods where the north and the west will be providing services on behalf of each other. And again, they are listed in the blueprint as referenced earlier. We are also continuing to work with the Information Commission Office to ensure that we fully meet the GDPR and information governance and make sure that we have mitigations of all of those risks where we still have systems that contain data that applies to both the north and the west. And we are working on the enterprise resource ERP system with good plans in place, and we are proposing to run the parallel payroll process alongside the process in March to make sure that all of the pay and systems are in place fully before we go live on payday in April. We now have extra resources identified to support customer and digital programme, predominantly there where we have the requirement for very specialist support. So things like cybersecurity, the type of support that we would buy in as a one-off to test our systems, which are important, particularly now we're operating in much more of a cloud environment. We're also, I've already covered that the North authorities have now all migrated to MS 365, and we'll refer to the cybersecurity there. In your last report, when I came before, we referenced the fact that we needed to identify staff resources for the close down of the sovereign authorities. That process continues probably well into September of 2021, as the accounts need to still be completed after vesting day. So staff resources have been identified for that. The work programme of Place North, considerable progress has been made on housing issues. There will be some reports coming through to the next executive around allocations. And we have also flagged the identification of proposed member accommodation. Members will know that the virtual meeting legislation only at the minute goes up to the 31st of March. We're expecting that to be extended, but it hasn't been extended at this time. So we will have to have a backup plan for that should virtual meetings cease. And we are working on service level agreements, which are progressing with the registration service regulator to ensure that there is an uninterrupted delivery after vesting day. We have now started to disseminate to all staff what we call our facts about sheets. These are the sheets that staff asked for that made sure that they had very clear and understandable information about a range of topics. So 2P, where am I going to be working from on day one? What devices am I going to use? How do I use MS 365? We're also doing we've got 14 of those out with staff. They are not just electronic. We recognise that there are staff out there who work in services that are not necessarily just online, so won't be able to access them on the intranet. So we're making sure that they're out there in the depots and with various service providers. There's also a further 16 in production that will cover things like, how do I download my payslip? How do I book annual leave? What will my pay dates be? What does host and services deliver? So they're information items. And since we did launch those electronically, we've had over 500 hits on those in the last few weeks from staff. So the feedback has been they're easy to access, they're nice and simple to understand, and they want more around some of those questions. So all of those frequently asked questions that staff asked are being fed through and using those facts about sheets. And I thought I just included the slide on the next one, which is just gives you an example, a good example there of what we're using to reassure staff about their first day at North and West Northamptonshire Unitary Council and what that means for them, but also what it doesn't mean, what changes won't happen and what will stay the same, because that's quite reassuring for staff as well. So I made a reference earlier to critical deliverables, particularly we're now less than 50 working days to vesting day. So the programme team are now particularly focused on that final sprint and are working on twice weekly stand-ups. We'll be working on daily stand-ups for next week to make sure that we've got absolute key critical deliverables discussed at the beginning of the week and they're delivered by the end. And they are in a single day one focus plan to get us over the line with that daily monitoring. We're also resourcing what we're calling a rapid response team for the North. So this is the team that will respond to yourself as members, to staff and customers if there are any day one issues. So we will ensure that there is a helpline in place so that any day one issues go through and they are recorded and dealt with on a solution-based focus, so that can be clear that we're feeding those in and we can address those should there be any. There will be. We've talked to other local authorities who have been through this process. There will be day one issues. It's important to make sure that we've got systems in place to deal with them quickly and effectively. So that is my report to bring you up to date. There'll be, because of the timing, there'll be another report on the 10th of February to the shadow executive, so it won't be far behind this before the next update is brought to them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Very informative. Any questions?
Chair, on Lisa's report, we've got Councillor Lee first, then Councillor Davis, then Councillor Hakewell.
Okay, we'll do it in that order. Councillor Lee, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just two questions, Lisa. Thank you very much for that report. There's so much work going on. I like to keep residents informed, so when we get briefings that are not appointments of particular people, if it seems like something that is of public interest, I like to share it with the residents. Can it be please made clear what's confidential and what isn't? Because it's happened that I shared something and then I was told, no, you shouldn't have done that, it's confidential. The identification of proposed member accommodation. So you must already have some idea. Can you tell me what criteria is used then to decide which location will be considered for member accommodation? Is that a political decision, or how will that be decided? Thank you.
I think, to be fair, and members will all have a view on this, it's a practical decision in terms of particularly leading through. You've got 170 members in North Northamptonshire at the moment. It's the practicality of having something that should they wish to, they could all be in the same room. The idea of us all being in the same room at the moment, Councillor Lee, as I'm sure sure we'll all agree, is some way away from where we are. So I think we've flagged that up as a risk because, as we said, the risk at the moment is that legislation only takes us to the 31st of March. We are expecting that legislation to change and to extend the virtual meetings situation at the moment, but we do have to flag that up as a risk if it didn't. And then there will be a member's view as to where the practicalities of that many members for a full council can meet in the future. I know there were some discussions on this with members some time ago, well before we moved into this virtual meeting arena.
Chair, can I come in there? And I know Lisa, if she was here, would kick me under the table. I think the legislation actually goes through to May.
Oh, does it? Sorry,
Ben,
no, beg your pardon.
yeah, Ben confirms by nodding his head.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Pardon.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's still it's still probably likely to be require continuation, I would guess. But
yeah. Next speaker, Councillor Mercer. Did you say, Paul?
No, Councillor Davis, then Councillor Hakewell.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Davis. Up to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just really like to take the opportunity to really pay tribute to all the great work that's been done by Lisa and her team. You know, it's easy to underestimate the sheer volume of internal change that's been going on when it's you know, sort of just a summarised report. But it's great to see that frontline staff are being involved, because these are the people that, if we empower them, look after them, they will deliver for us and deliver for local people. I really like the information sheet as sort of your first day at the new authority, just so it's as seamless as possible. I think it seems to be that seamless is the sort of the aim. So really impressed. Obviously, keep up the good work, and just hope we can build on what we're doing already. Thank you.
Councillor Hakewell, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for Councillor Hakewell.
Yeah, I've said this before, that it always worries me when you've got red, amber, green, and there's absolutely nothing red. So if we read that report, there's absolutely nothing that anyone has any concern about failing. That's my first question. You know, in the real world, in project management I've ever been in, there are always some reds. But anyway, maybe we should call it an AG report rather than a RAG report. The second part of that is, and it picks up on Ash's point, that there is massive work going on, and that work is going on with all our frontline colleagues. Those are the frontline colleagues who count the ballots, who man the polling stations, and do all of that work almost as an adjunct to their normal work. And those are the people that are trying to keep us safe from COVID. There's nothing on this programme status about the risk of the elections on May the 6th not taking place. And I'm sure maybe some officers feel, well, it doesn't really matter whether the councillors are there or not, or in place or re-elected. But I can't see how you can have such a status without something about elections and what the impact of that would be. But most importantly, to all those people who, you know, we've known for years, and especially those who are often retired, who are in the vulnerable COVID category, who are there making our elections run. So I would have thought we ought to have some sort of statement. My personal feeling is that there's no way we should be bringing thousands of people, if not millions across the country, into a room on May the 6th, all by postal ballot being counted with distancing and the money that that will cost. When actually, as Lisa has said, we haven't got 170 councillors, we've got 150 and declining. We've got 150 councillors, and we believe that 78 councillors are enough for the unitary. We've got twice as many to keep this ship, such as it is, sailing until perhaps September, because we're doing it now. I really think there needs to be some leadership, political or managerial, to talk about the elections, especially to make sure that we can all canvass.
Councillor Hakewell, in support of the officers here, how can an officer put forward a report that has got they've got no control over it? The elections could be in June, they could be in September, they could be October. They don't know. So how can officers really take into account what the risks are? There are massive risks. I see the massive risks of them not going ahead. And if they don't go ahead, we will have an unelected body taking power and making decisions from if it's October for 6 months that haven't been elected in any way and molding the council in the way they want to. And I think that's a massive risk, because I believe in democracy, which I think everybody does around this table. But I think it's hard for officers to say, look, it's hard for them. Lisa, do you want to come in on that?
Well, if I could just address the red, amber, green, first of all, I'll just address that. Appreciate where you're coming from with the red, amber, green, but the red would signify that a service would not be safe and legal on day one. And as we are, as of today, we are not reporting that we will have any services that would not be safe and legal on day one. So that's the most important thing there. So that's why there would be amber green. I appreciate this is a very wide measure, and I appreciate that you get to this point, and that is why I've made the reference to you end up becoming in a sea of amber at this stage because of you get to that final sprint. That is absolutely why we're changing our mechanisms for monitoring this and having a very line by line clear set of critical deliverables that are being delivered on a day-to-day basis and making sure we're working through that work plan to make sure that services are safe and legal. In terms of the election, it is not the programme. I appreciate what Councillor Pengelly has said. It isn't a Met officer. It's also not within the programme. The elections are not within the programme. Of course, the staff will be delivering, as you made reference to, but the programme team are not managing the elections. And this report is a progress on the programme. And what the programme is doing is to get us over vesting day on the 1st of April.
So there's no impact on no elections.
Well, it's not for this officer to make a decision on, Councillor. Moving on, who's the next to speak, Paul?
I don't see anybody else wishing to come in.
Yeah, just a couple of comments from me, and I've been speaking to a lot of Corby Borough Council officers who are still concerned and they've still got no idea where they'll be working. Have they still got a job, or are they just all going to be transferred over on vesting day? I said I believe they are, but it's not for me to confirm that. And where would it be working? If they're based in Corby now, would it be in Wellingborough? Would it be in Northampton? Would it be in Cambridge? There's so much uncertainty for staff that I would hope that sooner rather than later we can let people know what's going on. But where elected members are, it's the staff that I think we have to worry about, because they're the people that have kept the four authorities together. So I don't know if you could come back on that, please.
Yeah, of course, and it's a period of change, so it is difficult for staff. What I would say is, and I know we've reported through before, we have a range of what are called change champions throughout all of the organisations. So if staff are unsure, if we refer them to their change champions, they will be able to speak to them. They are across the whole of the authorities, and they're working within the authorities. So we're making sure that the information is cascaded to those change champions so they can reference those questions and feed them back up, or give the answers to any of those staff. What I would say is, and I know we've said this before, that the restructures for the authority are happening pre-vesting day just for tiers 1 to 3, and we're also having a transformation team restructure leading into the 1st of April. So that's the team that at the moment are working on the programme. The rest of the staff from day one are more than likely, unless they've been told otherwise, will be sitting where they're sitting, delivering very similar services from day one. There will be transformation changes going forward, and we have to be realistic about that. But if anybody needs that reassurance, then those change champions are those people who are being trained to cascade that information through the organisation and to feed back up. And that's how we got doing those fact sheets, Councillor Pengelly, because what we wanted to do was address those questions that staff were coming back in a nice, clear and simple way to hopefully help with some of that reassurance.
Yeah, it's what I've said to staff, that on day one, I don't think you'll be moving anywhere else. I think you'll be in that same desk well either side, and your new managers come in and look at the best way to work, and hopefully they'll consult with yourselves on what they do. So thank you for that. Any other comments?
Chair, I think I can't see any other hands raised for Lisa. Glenn, I assume you're going to come in with a financial report of some sort. No, Glenn's not going to come in with a financial report.
There's no financial report. It's the same tonight, so it'll be the next one will be on the 10th of Feb to shadow exec.
My apologies, my apologies, Chair. I've got the slide that says finance report summary. So
no problem, Paul. Forward plan of decisions 2020 to March 2021. Who's doing that?
Really, Chair, it's just for the committee to note what is
anybody want to comment it, or just note it and move forward? Is that agreed?
Noted.
Yeah. Thank you. Work programme.
Right. Obviously, in previous sessions, you've set up various task and finish groups. Obviously, the climate change group is ongoing, and to be honest with you, given the time where we are now and resource implications, I'm not sure whether the committee are considering anything else. I should say that there is, you know, an enormous amount of strain on officer resources at the moment, but obviously it's up to the committee to consider if there's something that they haven't covered, either in the blueprint or in the budget or in the in the climate change group that's ongoing. So it's really over to you, Chair.
Yeah. Could I ask the committee to agree that if you've got anything you want to raise, you email both myself and Victoria, and myself and Victoria Perry will discuss and come back to you on if we can take that forward or not, and we'll get agreement with everybody in an email. Does that seem fair to everybody?
Councillor Henley wishes to come in, Chair.
Yeah, Adam.
Yeah, just a quick query. We've got a meeting in a fortnight. That's purely budget, though, isn't it? From memory.
Well, sorry, Chair. The budget will go to the executive committee. I think I'm right in saying on the 10th of February. So
and
I suppose
I think then it then comes to us on the 11th.
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, you know, obviously, if there's any last minute, well, I say last minute, obviously, any comments that need to be made by the committees, that's fine.
Yeah. Adam, you were the one that led on the budget, so is it okay for you to do the presentation to the executive?
Yeah, if they need one from me.
Yeah, well, it's up to you if you want to go forward and talk to them or not, but that is open to you.
Yeah, okay. I'm happy to represent the committee if the committee's happy.
And we've already agreed to Councillor Lawman will look at hers, and Councillor Harrison can move hers forward as well. So, yeah, brilliant. Any other comments from anybody else? What's next on the agenda, Paul? No exempt items.
No.
No items of other business.
No.
Yeah, and I'd like to just.
Oh, sorry, Chair. Councillor Mercer wishes to come in on.
Yeah.
Can I ask that for future meetings you send out the Zoom invite to the substitutes, because I only heard that I was due to substitute for someone 15 minutes before this meeting was due to start, and it was extremely difficult to locate the Zoom invite in that short time, and it would help if the substitutes were given an invite and told log in if you're requested, because it would make life a lot easier.
That'll be sorted, Councillor. Don't worry about that. And could I ask for, because we did have a position at the beginning of the meeting with a councillor who was sitting on the committee that may have wanted to make a contribution. Some people are saying they should have been allowed. Some people are saying they shouldn't. I don't know. Could that be explored so we can look at that in the future? My own view is if there's somebody who wants to come along and sit in the committee meeting, I haven't got a problem with it, but I want to go by what the Constitution says, of course. I don't want to go wrong on that. So if that could be looked at. Yeah,
I mean, to be fair, the actual invites to the Zoom meetings are for participants, i.e. members, officers, or members of the public who request to speak. Obviously, the committee can invite executive committee members to attend to address certain items or speak. But as we operate with the executive committee and the other committees, usually the Zoom invitations would normally only go to those who are contributing directly on the agenda.
Yeah, fair enough, Paul. It's just said that. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. So, any other business? I just want to thank all the committee. Really, it's been a long meeting, especially all those involved in all the task and finish groups. You've done a really sterling job. So, thank you very much. And the meeting is closed, and we can go get some dinner now. Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
night. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.